With a management, organization, professional, and leadership development background spanning 25 years, her experience allows her to intentionally create a space for clients to be curious and open to growth. Savvy, sassy, and present, she believes that elephants in the room should be invited to the table, wined and dined, and that earthbound pigs should have the runway for immediate takeoff. Let's give a big warm welcome to Michelle Choate.
It's there.
Woo! How are you feeling? How's everybody feeling? Yeah. No, but seriously, how are you feeling? Right. How do you feel right now? Aren't feelings weird? Like, we don't always know where they're coming from or what creates them. Like, you're sitting here right now and you're feeling, because you've been in a space like this before maybe, and it's making you think about that, or you're thinking about the people around you, and they're making you feel. And all these things are happening, and sometimes we're feeling for reasons that actually don't have anything to do with what's happening right now. So where do feelings come from? And how do we know where they come from? What's called self-awareness, which is a quality of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is a function set that we gain as children and then can develop with time, experience, and effort. When we stop to attune ourselves to the environment, we get that choice and that chance to determine who we want to be in any situation. Now, these unconscious coping functions are the things that help us make sense of the world. But so many people don't have access to this readily, and we see this all the time in workplaces. People think they know who they are and try to extend that to influencing others, and it just doesn't work. Unfortunately, so often we're influenced by others to feel and think in ways that are unproductive and even harmful, and those thought distortions are the things that we need to manage for. Here's a couple pictures of me. Now, which one of these look like me? Who's me? I always go for the tall one, but really, neither of them are, and both of them are. It kind of depends on the filters that we use to see ourselves through the world, right? And so when we see reflected back to us things that give us value, that create sense of self-worth, we know that we are someone who's important and that is worthy of respect, or not. We know that we're someone who has a gift to bring, or not. And most importantly, we know that we ourselves have the capacity to see ourselves differently and sometimes choose not to, when we could be trying to have relationships that have a mutual elicitation of respect and self-worth. Emotional intelligence provides us with perspective as we actively, intentionally listen to ourselves, that talk we have in our heads, right? That voice. We question it, and we constantly seek information to help us reform our views of the world and ourselves within it. And with it, we can come to love ourselves, warts and all. Using emotional intelligence, we get to grow, to be our best, most authentic selves, and to truly influence in the workplace, in teams, in relationships, in community. It's a gift if we choose to accept it. Here's the thing. This is how the brain actually works. It sounds easy. You just think about it. Well, this swirly thing that's happening over my head right now, it's my brain trying to take in as much information as possible and then decide what's really happening in the environment. And when we perceive threat, our brain moves us into a behavior set that is reactive. And in that reactive space, we might panic, or we might lash out. We might say something harmful, or we might completely withdraw. And in that frozen state, we fall back to a habit or pattern of behavior that keeps us from feeling powerful. In those times, start with stealth. Most often we think we have to reach outside of us and try to make a difference, but it really starts here. We slow down our thinking, we start to question what we're assuming, and then we decide. If you want to start to own outcomes around you, start with self. And I call it first aid, aiding self first. And of course, it's going to start with awareness, right? If I don't know me, how can I change me? So I have to know, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's causing those thoughts and feelings? And what about those things do I control? And if we can find a way to really deeply connect with what motivates us and what needs we're trying to get met in a situation, we can then choose to solicit those opportunities from others to make those connections and create that mutual need. Otherwise, we're just going to keep trying to get those needs met in really unproductive ways. So now we're in this space of awareness, right? And we're still kind of swirling. Best next step, gather more information. Get curious. Ask questions. Our brain likes questions. And if I can start to ask questions and get really curious, which, by the way, in terms of leadership qualities and skills, is one of the most powerful capacities of leaders, I can very quickly move from this swirling and focus on self to focus on other. Self-awareness to other awareness. Here's a trick, too. Emotions are data. Has anybody ever thought about it that way? Emotions tell us something is happening around us or in the environment, and they give us the chance to be more curious. So if I feel a strong emotion, I can change how I'm going to react to it. In my business, I use a lot of different ways to gather information to heighten leaders' awareness very quickly. For myself, when I'm feeling these heightened states, I simply ask myself questions. Questions like, wait, I'm feeling the strong emotion. What is causing that? What is that all about? Think about that one, Michelle. I ask questions like, what else in this environment do I need to understand better so I can make different choices? Because here's the thing, if you assume you know what's happening around you, you may actually start to behave in ways that are out of alignment with what you want and really limit your choices instead of expand them. We go from awareness to information to decision. And decision is about choice. And you get to decide. So often we think others are making us do and think and feel. And here's the reality. Nobody makes you do and think and feel but you. I get to choose. And in that decision moment, I get to decide to act. Or here's the gift. I can choose not to act. I can even choose to make a small action, a little micro action that moves me in a direction that I want to explore. We think that the universe is telling us what we can and can't do, but when in fact, Deepak Chopra, especially that second paragraph, the universe has no fixed agenda for us. Once we make any decision, it works around that decision. There is no right or wrong, just a series of possibilities. Possibilities are so powerful. Choice. First aid is a tool that you can use to grow your emotional intelligence intentionally. Aid yourself first. In difficult situations, we often try to control everything else. Start with self. And think about it through the filter of putting on your own oxygen mask before you put on everybody else's. My mission in my company is to compassionately strengthen people's capacity for self-leadership and resilience and influence in a complex and changing world. Anybody work in that space? Right? But I didn't come here to really talk about what I do. I'm here to talk about why I do. I do what I do because of you. Every single one of you. Look around this space. Look at all of these amazing people. I do this because each of you are someone to someone else, and you matter. And what I want every person to feel and know is that you're also someone really, really important to yourself and valuable. And I want you to know your best self and be able to bring it every day. I got into workplace culture and leadership really through two different pathways. One was personal and one was professional. So in the workplace, I I've been doing this for quite a while, and I would watch people interact, and I was always a little bit surprised when we're trying to do the same thing, right? We've all come to this building to get together and do this work, and somehow we are choosing not to talk to each other, and we're judging each other and working against each other instead of with each other. So why would one department blame another department for each of them trying to do their best work? And who's not talking to the CEO about this decision that nobody agrees about? That kind of slows us down a bit. And really, why do we talk about people instead of to them and then not listen? Real and perceived complexity in organizational culture, those differences like power and politics and status and gender, all cause us to react in different ways that are often unproductive and harmful to outcomes that you're striving for. And so in organizations, we can see the issues that arise. What we want to seek is the power that we have as individual. If you want a powerful workplace where you can thrive, who do you control? That's a great point. Who in this audience right now is trying to control someone else? Oh, yeah, oh, good, own it, good, nice, right? Right, okay. Subordinate, partner, kid, how's that going? That's really the question, right? How is it not so good, right? No, it doesn't. Because we only have one thing we can control. And I call this our sphere of control. And it is my thoughts and my feelings and my choices. How I behave every day, I control. Nobody else does. If we can strengthen and maximize this sphere of control, we can actually more effectively influence people around us for more productive outcomes. But you have to start with yourself. So when I teach this kind of work or intervene with coaching teams, it's always really funny because I'll walk into a team, like I'm working with a team of 9 senior leaders right now at this organization, and they all think I'm there to fix everybody else. It's so funny. And then you get these really great epiphanies, like just 3 weeks ago, finished up with one of their meetings, and one of the senior leaders kind of walks in as I'm tidying up, and he's like, oh, I get it. So if I want my team to be better, I actually have to behave better. Isn't that cute? I'm so proud. Isn't that fun? So fun. Well, that was emotional intelligence. I was super excited. Most of us, notice the most, have a degree of emotional intelligence. It's a set of emotional and social skills that help us perceive ourselves in relation to others and understand how to use emotions to strengthen relationships and cope with stuff, right? So where does emotional intelligence come from? It's something that we start to develop when we're young, like the ages of 2, 3, 4, 5, like right when we're starting as little creatures to differentiate ourselves from the world around us. And so I might push my brother or sister down, and they cry, and I'm like, they're crying. Oh, well, if I fell down, I'd cry too because it hurt. I hurt them. Oh, now I'm sad. Emotional intelligence. Or Daddy walks in, and he's very stern with Mommy, and he says something sharp, and I see it, and I see Mommy, and I think, oh, I don't want to feel that way. And so I get small, and I withdraw to keep myself safe. Or Mommy's crying, and I get really playful because I want her to be happy, because when she's happy, everybody's happy, and it's so much better. Especially those critical caregiving relationships, those are the ones that we develop emotional intelligence to manage us for because we want to be safe. It's so instinctive. It's really, really important work. So how does this play into the other work that I do? Well, in a nursing's focus group I was doing, a nurse just had this great awareness. She said, even when I know that gossip about someone isn't true, I still kind of see them differently. And she asked, do you think because I'm looking at them differently, do you think I might be treating them differently and maybe they know? What do you think? I know, right? So let's take it another level. What if you knew a secret about somebody for 40 years, 4 decades? And every time you interfaced with them, every time you spoke with them, you knew this thing about them that they didn't know about themselves. Do you think they might feel like you're speaking with them differently? Do you think they might have a sense? Might you be treating them differently? Well, let's get personal. For the first 40 years of my life, I wasn't who I thought I was, literally. When I was 40, I learned that my dad isn't my dad. And my parents had changed their wedding date to reflect prior to my birth. They had their choices. Fine. What's interesting is my siblings didn't know either. So none of us knew for 40 years. And everyone else knew. And I'm not kidding you. 10 or 12 aunts and uncles, 10 or 12 cousins, their spouses, extended cousins, community members, people that raised me, that I saw as parents to me. All of them knew this about me, and no one told me. I received affection, I had love, but there was always this tinge of something else that I didn't understand, that I could feel, and I couldn't put it in its place. And I would get glimpses of things like pity and blame and shame. And it was so confusing, and it was so hard, because I would get these things reflected back to me that I didn't understand. And then I got this phone call from my sibling, and they said, "You need to call our parents right away. They have something to tell you." And I kid you not, no pre-knowledge, nothing else had prepared me for this moment. And I sat there and I said, "Is my dad not my dad?" And we were both stunned. How did I know? Because nothing in my life had lined up. It's emotional intelligence. Well, I didn't know what emotional intelligence was at that point. I knew that what people had been telling me all my life wasn't lining up with what I was treated and what people said to me and how I felt. During our formative years, we learned to create different and compartmentalized versions of ourselves to fit different situations. So in workplaces, this comes out when people are using their child-learned coping mechanisms and start damaging relationships in ways like acting out, making jokes inappropriately, avoiding, all of that so that they could feel some sense of control or power. So basically, I was coping in almost every relationship in my life for 40 years. This is why I do the work I do, because for 40 years, I felt disconnected and I couldn't explain why. I was always really careful to not step on people's toes or push buttons. I would lash out and then feel all of this shame, and I didn't understand, and I was kind of confused and a little bit crazy, and occasionally medicated, because my heart was breaking all the time, and I didn't understand why. Self-awareness. In that moment, I got some. Who in this room is self-aware? Right on. Good. Awesome. Actually, I knew who you were. I could see your aura. I'm kidding. Self-awareness is hard. I work on it all day, every day, not only for others, but for myself, because it is difficult. We're not hardwired to do it, these coping mechanisms. So suddenly I have this wash over me with this information of self-awareness. And I'm not, in this moment, when this happens, like that. I thought to myself, I'm not the broken one. After years and years of remembrances that kept washing over me for a full day, I was processing and thinking, well, that makes sense now. Well, that makes sense. And all of those hushed conversations and harmful behaviors and difficulties in all of my seminal relationships were suddenly clear to me. And what it gave me for the first time in my life was the choice to be me and nobody else. Not what other people thought I should or would be, or not what I was told to be, but what I could be. I didn't have to tell any longer myself stories about my worth that didn't make sense to me. I could choose to trust my heart and my gut, which, by the way, had been telling me the truth for a long time, and I had been avoiding it because I didn't understand it. More information gives us choice, and choice is power. Now, Spider-Man's uncle also says, he's one of my gurus, with great power comes great responsibility, which means with more self-awareness, I am more responsible for myself. With this new information, I decided what my relationships would look and feel like. I decided to set boundaries. I decided that nobody else gets to be okay at the cost of me being okay. No more. I also decided to forgive myself for maybe not being the nicest person sometimes when I was coping with things I didn't understand. And I also decided, this is a lot of work, to give grace to those around me who were simply doing the best they could with what they had. I decided I wasn't going to blame anyone. I was going to take back my power. And to see others than less than human is really inhumane in and of itself, and I'm going to choose to not be that guy. I'm choosing power. I had this client who did this great thing. He was going through this process just like me, and he goes, "Oh, I get it. What you're saying is I just get to be myself, but don't be an asshole." Right, just don't. Every client at some point is going to look me right in the eye and say, "This is hard." It is hard. All of this is really hard. So here's the deal. I'm giving you a bye. You don't have to do this stuff. You don't have to do this work. It kind of sucks anyway. Like, self-awareness is hard because you have to keep it up, and then you have to take responsibility for yourself and blah, blah, blah. So how about you just not, right? You get that choice. That's the joy. You don't have to do this. So what are the costs? Well, at home, in workplaces, it comes out in unproductive behavior, harmful emotion, physical and emotional impacts that actually turn into real physical and emotional mental issues, including health. It comes out in harm in relationships, impacts on productivity at work, creates and sustains this misalignment between my personal values and what I really, really want, which now I'm embarrassed about or feel shame about, so then I blame other people and I avoid and maybe I self-medicate and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Choices. On this journey that I've been on, I'm actually wrapping up my own kind of mental health journey, and I'm in my therapist's office, and this is like 6 months of every week, and I'm crying, and every week I'm like, oh. I finally go to my therapist, "Why am I still here?" And she looks me straight in the eye, and she goes, "Look, Michelle, if you do not deal with this stuff right now, you're going to be back here in 20 years on your 4th marriage, and you're going to be trying to convince me that ground glass is actually a really valuable food additive." And I thought about that, and I was like, shit. Okay. I got to own this stuff, man. I have to own my own health. I have to own my own journey. And if I do not do this for me, I'm going to be harming the people that are most valuable to me, the people that I love. I'm worth it. They're worth it. And by the way, still in my 1st marriage, and I make a great baked brie that's 100% safe for consumption. People adapt to stay safe, and we just talked about some of the costs, but I've seen people in teams do this, and they can evolve the thinking. Without the choice, though, there's always going to be dysfunction, harmful behavior, reactions, and ultimately lower productivity. As much as I've done this work, there's a story that has always stuck with me personally that I think is really kind of the culmination of the risk points. I was at a huge party, wrapping up for the night. Everybody's cleaning up the mess, and there was a giant chocolate cake. And we were divvying up this cake to give to people to take home. And I turned to a very dear female relative of mine, and I said, "Do you want some cake?" And she goes, "No, my husband doesn't eat cake." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, do you want some cake?" She goes, "No, he doesn't like it." I was like, every time I think about this, my stomach drops. And I was like, "Hey, hon, do you like chocolate cake? And she said, no, he doesn't like it. And my heart broke. Continuously compromising yourself in some way to try to increase your influence over someone else and try to keep yourself safe ultimately ends up giving away the best of you. You give away your power, and you can lose yourself. This stuff is hard, but it's not complicated. If I start with self, I get to control my journey of self-awareness, discovery, and choice. And you end up in this wonderful feedback loop of personal development. So every day you can get better at this work, and you don't have to do it alone. While I call this first aid, I want you to think about those who make it safe for you to be real, so you can be well. You know those people. They're the ones that reflect back to you your power and your choice. They never validate when you're not being your best. They challenge you every time, and they love you, and they support you, and they never resent you because they know that you're worth it. Those are your people. Ask for help, insights, reality checks, especially like me if I'm getting tired or losing hope or not trusting myself. They add perspective and they add accountability when we need it most. I had a very dear coworker who was that to me once, and I was working in a corporation with a big team of people, and I was doing this kind of work, and I was like giving it my all. And why don't they like me? I'm so smart, and I'm giving them all my great tools, and I'm trying so hard, and I keep failing. And maybe I suck, and maybe I shouldn't be doing this work. And I just took myself down this horrible pathway, and my coworker goes, Michelle, you're just not everybody's cup of tea. Oh, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That's great. You're right, I'm not. Because if I were, I would be bland. I would have neutralized myself to meet everybody else's needs, and I wouldn't be living fully into the quirkiness and the delightfulness and the weirdness that gives me joy in my work. I don't want to be everybody's cup of tea. I want to bring spice and passion and light and life every time I connect with someone. That's what I want to do. I get to choose that now. I choose to do this, and I choose to help others try to do this too. I choose to be real. I choose to be well. I invite you all, as you sit here for a moment, before you walk out the door, I want you to decide, what are you going to choose?